All right. Good morning. We haven't had Sunday school in a few months because we're on summer break, so we're really sort of starting a series with this presentation on Ecuador, because today is the presentation for the trip on Ecuador. Next week is first Sunday of the month, and so we'll have sung morning prayer. The week following that, we'll have a visit from representatives of St. Dunstan's Academy, which is being established in Virginia. Father Mark Perkins and potentially Thomas Fickley will be here from the St. Dunstan's Project. And then in the middle of September, the next Sunday, we'll begin a course entitled Holy Habitations, about worshiping in sacred space, beginning in Eden up to today. But we're going to compress a few things. So Eden, tabernacle, temple, first century church, early basilica to cathedral and developments in the West, and the old Anglican church at the very conclusion. And so we're really starting today with the 10 o'clock St. George tradition of ringing the bell. The semester has begun. Before we begin today, we shall pray. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O God, who has made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the whole earth, and did send thy blessed Son to preach peace to them that are far off and to them that are nigh, grant that all men everywhere may seek after thee and find thee. Bring the nations into thy fold. Pour out thy Spirit upon all flesh, and hasten thy kingdom through the same thy Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, so Bishop David and I were in Ecuador from the 14th to the 21st that week, visiting our global partnerships. And you recognize that this is not the effort of North American missionaries to bring the gospel to Ecuador so much as it is to partner with churches that are there which are needing assistance, and allowing the indigenous peoples to do most of the work in that country. We work with the Quechua people, who are the indigenous people of Ecuador and are most frequently the poorest of the poor. Specifically, the people that we have partnered with are in the Chimborazo region of Ecuador. Famously, Mount Chimborazo is technically closer to the sun than the top of Mount Everest. So in a funny way, it's actually higher than Mount Everest because it's on the equator. And as the Earth spins, it's actually a little bit oblong. And Chimborazo is about as high as you can get. As we minister to these people, Chimborazo is towering over us all the time. It's an interesting scene. But the partner church that we have there has sort of a long name, the IPAPAE, the Indigenous Pastoral Anglican Province of America in Ecuador. I know it's not as catchy as some other acronyms, but nevertheless, it's important to recognize the Indigenous Pastoral element of this, because pastoral also has a political element which is registered with the government of Ecuador. This is a self-governing body of the indigenous people of the Chimborazo area, and they have intertwined the church with that political element. And so they have presidents of local communities, of which there are about 22, and then they have a president over the entire indigenous pastoral. And these are all sort of intertwined with the actions of the church in those areas. And so we begin with a little history, a brief history of the IPAPAE. Quechua people are largely Andean farmers, and there are some Quechua in the Amazon region, who were essentially trapped in the hacienda system until the 1960s, which is not the same kind of slavery that we endured in this country, but a type of slavery in which, as it was clarified to me, a hacienda owner who would own the house and the land would promise maybe half an acre to an Ecuadorian family and pay them so little and charge them so much that they spent their lives earning this small piece of land, essentially bound to the hacienda and essentially indentured servants for life. If someone else were to buy the hacienda, they would also get the family. So it was like there were servants that were attached to haciendas. It was a pretty cruel system until the 1960s and 70s, when the hacienda system that functioned that way was broken down. I was under the impression that the government gave Ecuadorians the highlands, which were the worst, really, arable land. And I learned this trip that they were not given the land, they had to buy the land. So the government bought the land from the hacienda system and then sold it to the Quichua who had nothing, who once again had to spend decade upon decade purchasing this land. So here we are in the highlands, in the Andes, where the Quichua are continuing to farm. They were allowed to purchase land after their freedom was granted. They were under the Roman Catholic Church for most of that time, and they were treated essentially as property of the Roman Catholic Church. We've had some interactions with the Roman Catholic Church, which are largely Spanish clergy, and Bishop David was in at least one meeting where some of the Quichua were referred to as ours. They're ours. And we said, maybe something's lost in translation here. You don't mean that they're yours like they're yours. No, that's what we mean. That's our man. You can't have him. Oh, my goodness, yeah. So that famous meeting, the translator was so angry he couldn't continue. He had to leave the room. They had the freedom, though, to leave the Roman Catholic Church. They joined the Episcopal Church. For a time they were received, but the Episcopal Church, as you might imagine, did not respect their conservatism. They were not interested in the agenda of the Ecuadorian or of the Episcopal Church. And once the agenda had begun to be thrust upon the Quichua, they couldn't do it anymore. They were not interested in gay marriage and all these agenda items. And so they decided to leave the Episcopal Church, which left them illegal. Having left the Episcopal Church, it's illegal in Ecuador to gather and practice religion without registration in the Ministry of Religions and Cults. So they were basically vulnerable. If they were to gather, they could be arrested. The Samaritan's Purse has a spin-off group called Worthy Endeavors, and Worthy Endeavors learned of this situation and began searching for churches in the United States that could be associated with these Quichua, grant them legitimacy with the Ecuadorian government, and they found the Anglican Province of America and Bishop Grundorf. So they called Bishop Grundorf. He said, absolutely, where do we sign? What do we do? And they worked with the Ecuadorian government and with the Quichua to have them associated with us. So now they have, for the first time, an indigenous church, not associated with, we offer Episcopal oversight, but it's really a partnership, not so much, we don't lord it over them or anything like that. So in this picture you find a combination. I got a little laser here. That's Bishop David, of course, and that's me. We're from the Anglican Province of America. Dr. Matt McBurney is a representative of Worthy Endeavors, or Samaritan's Purse, who's also a translator. And Gustavo is the man that was ordained to the priesthood. Unique because he is mestizo, not Quichua, but he's dedicated his life to the Quichua, and so they accept him. And this is Deacon Walter, hopefully soon to be Father Walter, but he's got to get his seminary done. So Walter is wonderful, doesn't speak any English at all. Gustavo speaks English and Spanish and some Quichua, but you'll find that in the Quichua community, mostly they speak only Quichua or Quichua and Spanish. Very rare are the people who speak, I think even non-existent, are the people who speak English and Quichua, at least in our group. The most highly educated man we have is Father Luis, who's a university professor, and he doesn't speak English. He speaks Spanish and Quichua only. So translation is a big part of our interactions with them. But they found the APA, requested Episcopal oversight for the Quechua, and that's been the story since 2016. I think that was officially established. So here we are, and we're just going to go chronologically now. We arrived on Wednesday, and on Thursday we made our way into Quito. You might ask, if these are Ecuadorian Quechua from the Chimborazo Highlands region, why are we in Quito? Has a lot to do with the global economy, especially the economy in Quito, or in Ecuador, which has gotten worse over the last few years, and it's harder and harder to be a farmer in the highlands. I've learned that potatoes and produce from Peru is cheaper now than local. And so the situation economically gets worse and worse, and a lot of the Quechua from Chimborazo are starting to move to the city to try and find work, any work. Well, enough of the Chimborazo Quechua moved to Quito to start a church for them in Quito. Some money by Worthy Endeavors was donated, and the Quechua themselves got together some money. Father Carlos here holds in his hands the documents for the purchase of this land. And what we're doing is we're praying over, and the bishop is blessing land that's been purchased for the building of a new church for migrant Quechua who have to leave the highlands and come to Quito for work. And so we're blessing. You can see Quito is basically a city in a valley, and development goes basically up the sides of the valley or down lengthwise. Father Gustavo said it's like a sausage. It just keeps growing on one end or the other or up the sides. So as the development goes up the sides, here we are high up on one of the valley sides of Quito. And you'd say that that's bad, except for that in this country, people would pay a lot of money to have a house on a hill overlooking the city. Turns out to be actually quite beautiful up there. So they've decided to call this church Mount Sinai Church, and we're blessing the land. Somehow the Lord blessed us with fantastic photos. This was in the evening. We were surprised when we saw these. We thought, wow, that's really amazing. Father Kevin Fife, who saw this picture, immediately, it was posted on Facebook, immediately he reposted it with a passage from the Psalter about Jerusalem set on a hill. It's pretty dramatic. But the small congregation was with us there on Thursday night as we blessed that land and put the bishop to work in his mitre and everything, breaking ground. In the midst of that liturgy, there's a portion about breaking ground. This is Father Carlo, or Carlito. He is the legal representative of the Indigenous Pastoral and one of our few priests. So he's he's sort of an MVP of our churches that we partner with there. A couple pictures here of us blessing the land and us with some of the congregation, what it looks like when you're coming down from the land. So it's a pretty interesting spot. You see there's farmers even around Quito, working land and keeping livestock. By the way, the vegetable farmers have discovered that dairy is the new thing, because it's hard to get dairy from Peru, because by the time it gets here, it's no good. So the Quechua are starting to switch to dairy cows. And then they grow produce for subsistence, so they can live. When they feed you a meal, it's almost always exactly the same. And you'll see one in just a minute. But this is the church that they're meeting in now. One of the locals is allowing them to use a building. They've refurbished it, painted it, put in, recessed lighting and a tray ceiling. There's some skilled laborers in the Quechua community. So we had a service here. Their choir, every community has a choir. They wear, that's not exactly a poncho, but they wear something around their shoulders to indicate which community they're from. So there's several different communities in the Chimborazo region. They don't always wear the poncho that matches, but when the choir gets together, you know which community they're from by which shawl they're wearing. And so they sang for us. Bishop David asked to bless a 2-day-old newborn at that service. Pretty cool. But when we, you can't see the whole meal. But anyway, when we eat, They usually give you fava beans. They give you this little diced up onions and tomatoes, sort of slaw. You get a giant cob of corn, like Inca corn with the huge kernels. Cheese, their homemade cheese, and some kind of meat. You're either going to get chicken, lamb, beef, sometimes nothing, but it depends on how things are going. But anyway, this is the meal on that first Thursday night. And this is what the city looks like at night, because by the time we left, it was nighttime, and it's a pretty dramatic scene. The next day, Friday, August 16th, the first thing we did was went and visited a development project, which is only in the broadest senses associated with the APA. Really, this was a Worthy Endeavors venture. Up on the side of this valley, there's a spring at the very top, and the spring gives pure potable water for animals and irrigation, and they've had it channeled down the mountain, as you see in many places in the world. They channel the water, but they had no reservoir in which to catch the water. So they built 7 different reservoirs, you see them on the right here, in this project, so that water could be stored there, and animals could be nourished, and the agriculture could be nourished more readily with those 7 different cisterns. And St. Isabella community was very grateful that this project was completed. Tried to give a sense of how steep it is walking up to see those places, but this is Father Luis, and he is Luis Alberta, and he is the university professor who's also another one of our priests in the church. Came to bless actually asked me to bless the cisterns. So this is Dr. Matt, who is a big part of this project, and the community was very thankful to have this development project done in their community. This is one of I didn't catch his name, but he's sort of like the chief of the community. And so we continue. Yes, it is August, okay? But it's also freezing cold up there. Or not freezing cold, but windy and cold. Very windy and cold.
The elevation there is how high?
Oh, how high? Well, let's see. I want to say Riobamba is 9,000 feet high. So it's high altitude. Even in the hotel, the first night, I woke up several times because I couldn't catch my breath. I was taking deep breaths just to fill my lungs. You could take a few steps up and be out of breath. In this area, it's very high. So Chimborazo is over 20,000 feet at the top. It's very, very high altitude. They're accustomed to it, but we weren't so much. So when they said the cistern is just up there, 30-degree climb, quarter of a mile up, thin air. Yeah, we were winded, but anyhow, that same day after the visiting of St. Isabella community, we went back to the cathedral, Holy Family Cathedral in Guamate, for a lecture on Anglicanism in North America, which they requested. So Bishop David put that together. This is what the cathedral looked like the last time I visited, which was 6 years ago. It was just under construction, and the same building today, finished. Largely, actually, none of the building was completed by contributions of the Anglican Province of America. This is Worthy Endeavors and the people themselves contributing. So we have a unique relationship with the church in Ecuador. They don't really depend on us financially. They depend on us for episcopal oversight, and you heard why earlier. So anyhow, this cathedral in Guamate is a major development and a major validation of the church there to the community around. You have a cathedral, you have a bishop. There's head offices and classrooms around. This is what it looked like inside the last time I was there, and this is what it looks like now. So fantastic. And you can see a little addition right here, a little wooden icon carved by one of our artists. And the children, by Jean Rivard, of course, a gift from the Anglican Province of America. And the children in this room will recognize this, which is the banner that they signed at the last youth night. This is the little guys and this is the teenagers. And when I showed it to the clergy, they were so thrilled that they ran right up to the front of the church and put it up in the front of the church, if you can imagine. And Gustavo says, okay, Father Paul, we've got to get a WhatsApp thing going back and forth between the youth of St. George and the youth in the region. So, we're going to get, you'll see some more of the kids here in a minute. But this was the presentation on Anglicanism in North America, given to the clergy in the church there. Later on that day, we went and visited St. Teresita Church in Guamate, not far away. Everything was backing up in our schedule, so we got there a little bit late. In other words, the congregation couldn't wait any longer. They had a community meeting that night, so it was sparsely attended. But these girls who sang for us, they were there, and these are some of the troublemakers that I'm thinking our kids would have fun getting to know. They're precocious little girls, and this one's trouble for sure. But anyhow, normally they would gather, face the congregation and sing. So they all turned and faced the congregation and saw there was no congregation. So they turned around and did their whole choir presentation the other direction, facing us. So it was cool. Anyhow, Father Carlito plays on the keyboard while they sing a Quechua gospel song. It's in Quechua language, so you can't really understand what they're saying, and the style and the melodies are unique. You won't hear them anywhere else, and the style is, what's the word? It's unlike any other music in the world. So it's I'll almost say hypnotic, but anyway, it's pretty neat. And it's not like, the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ. No, it's not that. I think I might have a recording here, but just to show you that these Ecuadorian girls are the same as our Ecuadorian, or as our girls. I took a picture of them taking a picture of us. So everybody's got cell phones. So anyhow, so this is Father Carlito, Elsa, his wife, and their wonderful little daughter Karen. This is soon-to-be Father Gustavo and Deacon Walter, Bishop and I. I find that this painting, this mural behind, is pretty fascinating. It's Christ on the cross, wearing a poncho, clearly resurrected, with his hands outstretched, with fish and loaf. In other words, there's several biblical stories being put together into the context of the highlands of Ecuador in this mural behind the altar where they offer communion. So some pretty clever stuff going on. Bishop Chad was here for Father Carlos's wedding and ordination in the past, and he took a big picture of this mural and said, "Wow, look at that." So that's, but that was a short visit, and we were back home after a meal with the community president at St. Teresita, who cooked the best chicken I think I've ever had in Ecuador. It was so good. The very next day, Saturday, August 17th, baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist at St. Paul's Church in Gramapamba. So this was a big community celebration. They had a big party planned afterwards, and a large service where we stand outside before the procession at the beginning, and the kids who are to be confirmed follow a tradition that we found very moving and had never heard of before. So get this. If you're to be confirmed in the church in Gramapamba, you will first come down to the front of the church where your parents are waiting for you. And you will drop to your knees and confess your sins to your parents in front of the entire congregation. Now it's very quiet. They're quietly confessing to their parents. But these cool, hip teenage boys and girls rise from their knees, wiping the tears from their eyes. Their parents forgive them. And then the community forgives them. And then the bishop grants them absolution before they're confirmed. Whew. Oh my goodness, we don't have anything like that. And I don't even know how that would work. And my teenagers are looking at me like, no way. Not a chance. No way. But these boys and girls are the same age as you kids. But anyhow, here they are. There's music playing, so you can't hear what they're saying. But, just a dramatic thing to see their parents embrace them after they've confessed their sins. It's really something. Tight quarters, but as soon as you're confirmed by the bishop, they give you a candle to light your candle. And people are shoulder to shoulder, and there's fire. The candles are being turned right next to clothing and hair, and it was... I kept watching these candles, these kids. But nevertheless, after their confirmation, they receive for their first time, communion in the church. And the communicants, or the confirmands, get to receive first. So they're still carrying their candles. It's a pretty dramatic scene. I feel like the Lord blessed this particular photo with a beam of light that comes along their heads and the candles right to Father Pedro and Father Carlos, who are administering communion to them for the first time. And of course, it's being videoed on camera. Everything's being recorded. This is 2 pictures, but this young lady here, Vilma, she was baptized, confirmed, and received communion for the first time on the same day. That's why she's dressed differently. That's a little baptismal gown, pretty cute. And the kids making their confession to their parents again. Ready for the photo op at the end. Kids are kids, just saying. All the same. Goofing around. So, Bishop, I just wanted to show you, you gather from these pictures the difference in height, but here's Bishop David Haynes, who's 5'10", 5'10 and a half, something like that, bent over to bless this woman who's standing. After services, there's a line of people wanting to be blessed by the bishop. They want to be touched by the bishop. They want to receive his benediction. So it's a pretty moving scene. At the end of every service, this is what happens. And this is the party. So outside, no music, sorry. But anyway, just to show you, they've got a band with clarinets and saxophone and drums and the percussion, different percussion instruments, and they're passing around Sprite and some other thing which I'm assuming had alcohol in it, but I couldn't taste any alcohol. Anyway, this is Grandma Pamba. That was basically most of the activities for Saturday. Sunday, August 18th, was the main thing for us was the ordination of Father Gustavo to the priesthood. This is from the front door of the cathedral looking the other direction, and various deacons. This is Father Pedro, Father Luis, and there's 2 Father Luises, and several of the deacons who are also studying for the priesthood. So just to give you a sense, I forgot to do this before, there are roughly, amongst the 20 or 22 or so communities, roughly 20,000 Chimborazo Quechua involved in this group, for which there are 5 clergy, 5 priests, 7 deacons. The challenge is to get these guys educated enough to be good shepherds to these congregations. Right now, that's the major challenge. But they used to have 2, so now they have 5, and now they have 7 deacons, and it's growing, but it takes time. Every time there's an ordination, it's a big step forward towards stabilizing these church communities.
Father Paul,
Yeah.
how do the deacons do seminary?
Father Gustavo himself spent many, many years in seminary in the Roman Catholic Church. Many years of training. He has 2 different degrees and is able to teach. He also translated, you all have been through the King's Highway. If you've been through confirmation class with me, then you've read the King's Highway. I bet you've never done the King's Highway in Spanish or the King's Highway in Quechua, but Father Gustavo translated the whole thing for us so that it could be a crash course seminary experience. Also, Father Luis, who's tied in with the university, has found for us an inexpensive Bible teaching course that the clergy are able to take. They are also farmers, and so they don't just have all day to go to class, so it takes a little bit longer sometimes. But Father Gustavo has been sort of heading up the seminary. And in the foreign countries, it's like you'd like everyone to have a master's degree in theology. It just is not going to happen, or it's hard to make it happen. So we do the best we can. And we still don't lay hands on anyone suddenly. So we need to make sure they have at least the training of the others. Father Luis is very concerned about the education of the priests. But anyway, this is, I guess, the day before when they were receiving the poster from St. George Youth and how excited they were to stick this up on the wall. Anyhow, this is preparation before the liturgy of ordination. Father Matt translating for, not Father Matt, Matt. We just call him Matt. But anyway, he has a doctorate in, but anyhow, Dr. Matt, Bishop David, Father Luis, preparing for the ordination liturgy, which is a little complex if you've ever been to an ordination. And so we're ready to process in. It's interesting, something very, very Ecuadorian and not at all North American. The service is scheduled for 10. The service began at 11. At 10, there was almost no one there. And we thought, boy, this is bad for Father Gustavo. This looks like no one's supporting him. Maybe there was 30 people there. By the time the service started, there was 250 people there. They're just on Ecuadorian time, that's all. So anyhow, by the end of it, there were several choirs from different communities had gathered, and there was a big, long performance from rotating groups of choirs singing. What's really cool about these choirs is that they always have some choir members in training, sometimes very small, and they do sort of they sway back and forth during their song. Sometimes they'll have a hat, and they'll do something with the hat like that, just when a whole group of people does it in unison. It doesn't look like much when one person does it, but when everybody does it, it looks kind of cool. And to see the little girls dressed up the same with their little hat doing the same thing, so cute. But anyway. Father, now, after his ordination, Father Gustavo and Father Luis are administering communion to the congregation. And here's Father Gustavo celebrating and many of the clergy behind. You'll notice that they do celebrate from the, what you call it, Novus Ordo Western position rather than how we do here. We tried to convince them to do it the right way. And they introduced us to a contextual problem that we had not thought of, which was when the Spanish Roman Catholic Church had the Quechua, the priest was always at the front, but you couldn't hear, and the Quechua weren't allowed to sit in the front. They had to sit in the back, the very back of the church, because they were the lower class. And so not only could they not hear or understand what was going on, they were back of the bus. So while it's liturgically wrong to stand on the other side of the altar, to them, it means something more. It means the Quechua are being brought in to the church rather than given the back of the bus. And the liturgy's been spoken in a language they can understand, which is a very Anglican thing, by the way, to have the liturgy and the scriptures read to you in a language you can understand, which is why I don't insist on English or anything like that. So Father Luis is a whiz-bang clergyman. He's able to translate from the 1928 Spanish prayer book to Quechua just on the fly. So he's pretty good. Not everybody can do that. After a priest is ordained, he's given an opportunity to bless individually everyone in the room. First, the bishop who ordained him, then the clergy, then his family, and then the entire congregation. So Father Gustavo is here beginning to give blessings to the clergy. Who are these guys? So the clergy are these guys. Presentation of the icon, which was blessed during the service, a gift from the English province of America, created by Jean Rivard. And they're gratefully receiving it. And you also sneak in a drawing from Peter of our church, Sammy from our church, and some of the other kids from our church who their little crayon drawings are in the background of this cool picture. The icon sits over the aumbry where the sacrament is reserved. And interestingly enough, there's another wood carving of Christ just below the icon. So, and I just was so happy that they loved this picture that I kept taking pictures of it. But anyway, just to show you, it's up at the front. That's cool. We had a few different clergy meetings afterwards. Father Luis is addressing the bishop, and Matt is translating. And he's just basically giving a pep talk for the clergy before Bishop David and I departed. And you can see the goofy girls. I'm just saying, they have like a youth choir and an adult choir, and I just envision our kids having some relationship with these kids there. They're very proud of these choirs. So they're from St. Teresita, same girls that were, singing for us a night before, 2 nights before. After the service, people come forward for blessings as always, and Bishop David is able to bless anyone who wants a blessing, including mothers oftentimes want their babies to be blessed. When we were up on the hillside in St. Isabella with the cisterns, a woman had her baby strapped to her back with his little head sticking up, and she said, "Padre, Padre," like, blessing, blessing. So I was like, all right. So I reached in there, and he squirmed and everything, but I gave him a blessing anyway. Yeah. So this is little Karen. She's just an angel. And this is a lady who looks just like my sister. This is Gustavo's daughter. And so I had to take a picture. Any of you who know my sister would look at that picture and almost say that's her. It was very interesting. She was practicing her English with me, and she was actually from Mexico. This is a dinner celebrating Father Gustavo's ordination to the priesthood on the same day. So that was the end of Sunday, really the end of our business, I guess you could say, amongst the churches. A flaming steak. They have a pretty cool presentation at this place in Riobamba. But anyhow, that was fun. And here is Father Gustavo, me taking a picture of Father Gustavo taking a picture of his dessert, which was impressive. And this is my dessert, which is a banana split. It's, well, they made their own ice cream. It was tart strawberry, vanilla, chocolate, strawberries, and gold flake. So you were eating gold. It was pretty special. By the way, I brought with me several chocolate bars for us to somehow partake of. I'm not sure how. Maybe in coffee hour afterwards we'll find a way to set the chocolate bars out. You can try some. It is my favorite brand in the entire world, so if you say yuck, don't say it to me. I'll be mad that I wasted my chocolate on you. Anyhow, so on Monday we had sort of a day off. We went to Riobamba. It's a cool statue of Neptune in the center of Riobamba. And there's me. There's not much left of this presentation. But I don't know if you've ever had helado con queso, but that's ice cream and cheese. That's what you do. That's what you do. So fruit, ice cream, cheese, no bacon. And this is not mozzarella. This would be like a sweet dessert cheese. And so it's basically like a textural kind of thing. And we were in downtown Riobamba, and randomly, we heard the voice of little Karen, and her mother Elsa just happened to be downtown too, so that was kind of fun. Matt's taken a real shine to Karen. He brought her a bunch of presents this time. It was like Christmas for Karen. It was nice. And that's the end of the presentation. So I wonder if you have any questions about Ecuador. We've got just a few minutes. Miss Sarah.
You keep mentioning community.
Right?
And I was wondering if the community is centered around the church. Do they live and work within that community, or are they spread out and come together for church?
I would say the church in these communities, and we use community in a specific sense. Like here we say, let's all be in community, and we don't really, it's more like neighborhood, you know what I mean? And the farmers and the church and the city center and the president of the community is a real organized thing. But it is a locale. So the farms are there, the church and the houses are oftentimes in something like the center. And so it really is almost like a medieval hamlet or something like that. Self-contained. That's right. Very few people have means of transportation of their own. So there is no, let's go shopping in the other community or something, or there is no sort of metropolitan sort of crisscrossing. That's why the communities can be so united and dependent, or interdependent. What's the word? They really cooperate with one another. It really means something that they're in the same group. They help each other. So.
What other religions or Christian flavors are there?
Well, evangelical churches are there. In the communities, they basically move as one. So, like, you know, in the New Testament, when the jailer and his whole household were baptized, we're so individualistic. It's hard for us to imagine the father made a decision so the whole household, you know, went along. But that's not far from what we're talking about here. The whole community has joined the IPAPAE, you know. So it's, yeah, if you're growing up in the community, you don't shop for churches. The church and the community are the same thing. So, yeah. In Quito, of course, it's much more metropolitan. You could probably find another place to be, but they don't think that way. Why would I want to leave my community? It was heartbreaking enough to leave Chimborazo. But when you get to Chimborazo, you find the people from, or when you get to Quito, you find your Chimborazo people and you stick with them. So, yeah. Other questions, John?
What is the relationship of Samaritan's Purse Worthy Endeavors with the APA?
Samaritan's Purse is not connected directly in Ecuador. Worthy Endeavors is just a few people from Samaritan's Purse who had a specific interest in this. And so there was some money there. It may not be there in the future, but there's some folks, and I'm going to pull up a text to make sure I get the name right. Richard and Karen Todd are really sort of administered from they used to be from Samaritan's Purse, now they're from Worthy Endeavors. They work with Matt McBurney to give essentially financial support to the congregations and sometimes special support for a building project or something like that. But Samaritan's Purse is not really directly connected. Worthy Endeavors is directly connected. So they basically provide regular funding. We provide Episcopal oversight. If their funding dries up, the APA may be more financially involved because it's a real going concern there amongst the Chimborazo. It really does fit in with our larger mission strategy, which is partnerships, but also reaching either the poorest of the poor or the churches that are not being or Christians that are not being helped by anybody else. So this fits actually kind of right in that category. They were about to be illegal before we were able to help them. So financial help may be in the future a bigger thing with Ecuador, but it really isn't right now. So, any other questions? Well, the end. Thank you. Okay.